So exciting. I've been looking forward to this all week. The way that I went about this is I actually kind of like went backwards and ended up chatting with some people, and I looked through books from the era. Okay. And I'm
Awesome.
going to
And
level with
we're
you.
talking Klout here, if anybody
Yeah.
hasn't read the title to this
Yeah. Yeah.
video.
Yeah. All of them mention Cloud.
Oh,
Literally all of them mention it.
We
which
did
books?
I mean, we had some marketing, our HR, our PR person brought me a pile. I think there was like 35 books in the pile that like Klout was either like in the name of the book. Like there's literally a Klout for Dummies book,
There
which is amazing.
is?
Yeah, there's a Klout for Dummies book. R was like, a chapter was about Klout. So it was so funny and random.
So on the inside, this looks like there is a maelstrom that's kind of happening to you. It is causing you to get random calls from celebrities or celebrities agents that are saying, "Hey, why isn't my Clout score," says Taylor Swift's manager, better than Britney Spears's Clout score? You need to fix that for me. You're starting to get deals where you're brokering influence or potential influence with brands. What happens from there?
Yeah, I mean, it was actually crazy. We would get the agents and the celebrities and athletes and all these people pinging us about their cloud scores, but I was also getting death threats about people's
You
cloud
were?
score. Yeah.
Holy
Uh,
shit.
so there was this moment in 2011, I suppose 2012, around there, where we did a massive algorithm change, and everyone's score went down a ton. And for like a couple days, hashtag Occupy Clout, this was in the Occupy Wall Street era, hashtag Occupy Clout was trending on Twitter.
Wow.
And if you searched Clout CEO or Clout phone number, my cell phone came up.
Of
Because when I
course.
incorporated the company, I just put my own cell phone.
Of course you do.
So I was getting like just hundreds of calls a day, people like pissed off about their scores, death threats. My apartment people would just show up at my apartment.
Yeah.
It was like, it was a crazy, crazy moment. It was, we'd have people just show up at the office. It was, definitely wild.
So, and this is for those of you that didn't have an opportunity. Really the blessing to be able to listen to the first version of this episode, first part of this episode. It's you're in the Twitter office because it's easier to get their attention and get business deals done that way. So, and anytime that someone passes to the Twitter offices, you're like scraping Twitter to be able to say, "Hey, pass by Cloud." Also, like y'all are on the same level, but it's starting to feel a little bit. It must start to feel like you're going to the same level, right?
Yeah, I mean, we went through a couple years where literally every day was our biggest day, and
Wow.
Crazy.
so we were in the Twitter building. We were outgrowing our space. We got our first real own office a couple blocks away in San Francisco. There were, at this point, like 9 of us or 10 of us working in the company. And I signed a lease for like 20,000 square feet.
I'm not calling
That's
this
a
out as
warehouse,
mistake.
man.
It was a warehouse. It literally was a warehouse. And I have an amazing picture of the team standing in the middle of it. And I was just like, we're going to be big. Like, we're going for it.
Wow.
And it was just a great deal that fell in my lap. So I just jumped on it and I sublet it out the building in a bunch of ways. Kleiner
That's cool.
Perkins was actually renting from me. Like their
That's
San
cool.
Francisco office they had invested in the company, and then I was charging them rent. So it's like, I was like, they invested in the company. I was paying rent, but then I was charging them rent on space that they had already paid for.
Man.
It was pretty great.
Okay. And so by this point, keep in mind, it's not the early days of the internet, but it sure feels like a little bit it's the beginning of Web 2.0, essentially, in a way,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's definitely
the
Wild
beginning of
West.
this. Yeah, absolutely. And SF is still the Wild West, and it's small, and Jack Dorsey just sitting in an office doing, coding or whatever. And so you've raised a round from Kleiner that feels massive at the time. The company is growing. In your mind and in the minds of Kleiner, it's starting to feel like this could be a unicorn or whatever people said back in the day. Is that right?
Yeah, so I had, Kleiner led our Series B, which now would be like a Series A. And then we did
Right.
a Series C, which was a $30 million round that Kleiner led again.
Right.
They
And
led 2 subsequent rounds.
yeah, they led 2 rounds, and I had 2 board members from Kleiner.
Okay.
So they were like
Wow.
deeply, deeply in.
Okay.
And I remember one of those board members telling me that he had told the partnership at their Monday meeting that we were going to return the fund. So,
Which is what
Wow.
everybody hopes, right? And so
Yeah.
to understand the mechanics of venture capital is any investment, because of course some of them will fail, every investment should have an opportunity to return the fund. And the moment, the day where it's clear that something is going to return the fund is like, it's like a magical day. Oh my God, the investor feels good. Everybody feels this is it.
yeah. And in that moment, it felt like, we felt the full force of Kleiner Perkins behind our company.
Right.
And
Wow.
when they lean in, it's an incredible thing. Like
Mhm.
what they were able to bring to bear for us. So like an example, just a random funny example. I was having a conversation actually with John Doerr, and he
Mhm.
was asking me what I was worried about. And I said, we dealt with we were ingesting a ton of data and doing all this crazy analytics on it. And I was like, I've been reading about some privacy legislation that, we just need to be kind of aware of and, could cause problems for us. He's like, oh, okay, let me set something up for you. The next night I'm having dinner at Al Gore's house to like talk about internet privacy. It's so beyond ridiculous. Uh, and it was just like that kind of stuff all the time. It was
Yeah.
amazing and
I'm
really cool.
I'm curious, just from Kleiner's perspective, they obviously thought a lot about you, and their bet here is like social is obviously going to take off, and you're going to be a big part of it, and you're going to be the influencer side of things. Did they, do you guys know, did they invest in any of the other like Facebook or Twitter or any of the other? I guess it was just Facebook and Twitter at that time where they weren't major investors. So this was maybe like their like bet on social potentially.
Yeah, we were, I think they were in a late round on Twitter.
Okay.
Um, but I don't, it was like one of those big later rounds.
Yeah.
Facebook was an Excel company, famously,
Right.
and Twitter was a benchmark and
Really benchmarked.
Fred Wilson company.
Yeah.
So whatever. Sorry.
USV.
Yeah. So the way Kleiner was thinking about us, there was a social component, but it was really this story that like the world was changing.
Right.
The internet used to be about pages. Like you
Yeah.
got credibility because you were on NewYorkTimes.com. Now the internet was about people, and Klout was page ranked for people. And there was this
what a
like
story.
Jeez, what a slide
it's a
to
great
have.
slide. So literally the slide was like, here are the layers of the internet, and Klout is a new layer. And that we were
what
like,
I love about you're so good on so many. You've run 3 venture-backed companies. You're in your 3rd today, and you did all this other crap before that is also kind of low-key amazing. And so in our WhatsApp groups that we have, you're referred to as like the silent killer.
Yes.
and I first of
Yes,
all, I
you
love
are. You are.
that because you are you've gone through so much. Do we like page rank for people is an incredible phrase, especially to VCs back in that day. It would be like, wow, you're going to index all people and all of their ability
Right.
to affect things.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a viral component and there is a word of mouth component. And like everything on the internet, if it gets hated to some degree, that's good.
Yeah.
And it means it's going to drive results. So there's a part of you that believes it, but there's a part of you that's also selling it. And so what is happening to the business at this time?
I mean, selling it's really a good word because every metric is argued about, like,
Right.
Nielsen ratings, Q scores, like every kind of arbiter of importance is argued about. But ultimately everyone says like, well, it's a number we can all agree on. So it's a shitty number, but we're going to do business around that.
Because you can compare it to
Yeah.
everybody else.
So
Yeah.
my attitude was like, we want to be the shittiest number that is the standard. So it was all
Right.
about like,
The standard. Yeah.
so like, we did a lot of things. I mentioned those deals earlier, like Virgin America giving plane tickets away based on
Right.
Klout scores,
Right.
hotels in Las Vegas upgrading rooms on Klout scores, CNN when they scrolled a tweet would show the Klout score. Like those things made the number real.
Right.
And so we did a lot of smart stuff to like reinforce the number. Ultimately, who knows, like we had a lot of smart people working on it. We had teams of PhDs and the number was as legit as a number could be, but we were measuring
Yeah.
an emotion. Like
Yeah.
we were measuring influence. Influence is an
Right.
emotion the same way like love is an emotion or hate is an emotion or whatever. So it's like, the whole thing was we had to build this big story. And so the business was growing and we had two businesses. We had one side there was this consumer side where people were signing up and getting their Klout scores.
Yep.
Then we had brands paying us to connect them to influencers in that group.
Right.
And we were working with like, all the top brands. And then we had another side of the business where our API was doing billions of transactions a day. And I mean, that was probably the other killer slide in the deck. We had a slide that was like, there was only like 5 companies at that time doing more than 1 billion API transactions a day.
Wow.
And all of them were like thousands of employees. And we were like 50 employees doing like multiple billion transactions a day.
Wow.
And it was like such a good slide. But we had, the data business was also really good.
Right. So what happens next? So you're obviously you have this 30 million from Kleiner. You're at 50 people at this point.
Yeah. So we do this big round. Kleiner leads the round. IVP's like kind of right next to him. Venrock comes in, like, top firms. We're still every day still the biggest day. It's kind of like growing. We're hiring a ton of people. We went from like being just me for a year to like, I remember one day we had 15 people start on a day.
Wow.
And we're like one of the hottest companies there is. So we're pulling people from Facebook. We're pulling people from Google, like amazing people. I get Emil, Michael, COO joins the team. Like, like ridiculous talent. So it's kind of
Michael's, for context, later becomes the COO of Uber many years later.
Chief business officer, but like
chief business officer, excuse me.
Ridiculously talented person. So the team's getting amazing. We're pulling all these great people and growing. And this goes for about a year. And then we kind of like peak.
I saw a moment on your face just now where an emotion came through. And I'm just going to try and call it. You were like, it was like a moment of like almost weeping. Did I see something cross your face?
I don't know if it was weeping, but it definitely, it was like a thing. Like it sitting in my bedroom in New York, like coming up with this idea.
Yeah.
There was this vision of like, oh, I'm going to create a score. It's going to become the standard.
Yep.
Going to get it distributed everywhere and people are going to get free stuff because of it.
Right.
All those things happened.
Yep.
But we had, multiple years of every day was our biggest day and started not happening. Like then it was like, it was a big event had to happen to like break, we were kind of treading water. The numbers were still big.
Yeah.
But it wasn't up and to the right anymore.
Can you talk about what those numbers were?
We were doing like 10-ish million in revenue.
Okay. Great.
So like, pretty real numbers and the
revenue, just to be clear, that is the brands are paying you for access to these influencers.
And then it was like half, it was probably like 70% that and 30% data.
Okay.
So we had like Salesforce and, big companies paying us for access to data.
Yep.
So we're starting to tread water, and we start thinking, internally we're having conversations like, all right, we got, no one's freaking out yet,
What's the
but
user number that?
probably, well north of 10 million registered users, but we have scores on hundreds of millions of people.
Right.
Right.
And we were going from like, we had months where we had like 1 million people join in a month to now it's like 1 million people in a quarter. And so
Right.
it's like the velocity's slowing down, but it's still growing.
And at this point, just for context, Twitter has what, a couple 100 million users or something, and Facebook's got
1 billion.
what, 1 billion?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're an order of magnitude below them, below like registered users,
For
below
sure.
Twitter. But that's still pretty, that's
But it's
for
probably-
signed
but,
up
like-
users. That's great.
Yeah. And they're engaged, and it's the cream of the crop of their best
Right.
users.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's the people that people want to reach. And your revenue per user is probably higher than Twitter, Facebook, than LinkedIn at that time.
Yeah. And we have scores for everybody. We don't need you to register to have your
Right.
score. And so
Right.
we're monetizing even the unregistered users through our data.
Right. Right.
But we want to, we're trying to get to 100 million users. Like we're
Sure.
trying to grow really fast, and we get up to around 20, but it's but it's slowing down. So we're starting to think about, okay, like cool, what is the next product line? And
Yeah.
and we're starting to like spin up little teams internally to like try different products. We buy a company that's this is mobile still wasn't we didn't start in like the mobile era,
Right.
and it was clearly becoming a big deal, but like we didn't have that, so we bought a team and kind of made them our mobile team. We're trying a lot of stuff, and you're seeing people get nervous. Like the board meetings start getting tougher.
Right.
I have these growth that previously Kleiner was really great because it was like they're a big name brand, but they're still early stage investors. So like
Yeah.
it felt like our board meetings were about the ideas and like we're learning stuff and what's next. Where now I have like the IVPs of the world who are great. They were growth investors who are like, hey, let's run through the numbers again, guys. Like let's dig into these numbers a little bit more. And like the
Right.
meetings become more challenging. You can feel people get nervous. You start seeing for the first time some churn in the org. People
Which is
who've-
normal.
But there's
yeah,
a
and it's
moment.
like it's interesting. You learn. I'll go real
Please.
quick. You learn there's this type of employee who is building a portfolio
Yes.
of stuff.
Yes.
And
Especially in
I
Silicon
swear
Valley.
they like,
Yeah.
I swear they like on their 366 day open TechCrunch and see who has the headline, and they're like, well, I guess I'm going to Pinterest, or like
It's so
whatever
true.
so we had like we were a really hot company. We got a bunch of those people who are really, have great pedigree.
Yeah.
None of them really invest, not none of them, but like a lot of them don't invest in the culture or whatever. They're very mercenary.
Yeah.
And then they all started kind of bailing as we weren't the like hottest, sexiest thing.
Joe.
So it's like, it's not bad yet, but it's like, it's, it's feeling like pressure for sure.
Right.
And, we're a Series C company trying to do like Series A seed stage experimentation, and it just has people nervous.
Right.
And then out of nowhere, Microsoft comes knocking. And, they'd been kind of like different teams that, we try to know everybody. We're always pulling data from everywhere.
Right.
But I get connected to the Bing team, and we basically really quickly come to a huge partnership. It's it's basically a $20 million deal. It's like
Wow.
split between
God.
data. They wanted to integrate Klout data into Bing, and an investment. They invested in this.
Yeah.
And part of the deal was we had a like dedicated team for Bing, and they had we created a team together that was like half staffed with them and half staffed with us.
Wow.
And we were going to do all this cool stuff. And it wasn't explicit, but it was very implicit that like this was a path to them buying us.
feels to
Right.
And it
me
was actually
like,
really interesting giving their
yeah,
space and stuff like that.
Microsoft here is looking the same way with the AI thing. I think right now it's actually a good time to talk about it. Microsoft is
Yeah.
always looking for the chinks, the sort of the bumps in the armor of Google or
Of
other,
Google.
right, specifically Google. And here they were explicitly like, anything that damages Google, we want to do, is what they said about OpenAI. They were like, if it damages Google, we're down. And you could see how they could think about the social movement, the phenomenon of social media, as being a way that they could get a better understanding of search and improve their search results in a way that Google could not. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to PageRank for people.
Right.
And
Of
it
course.
was an angle they could take through us that like, you know, gave them a story and a like product to differentiate against. So the idea, we actually built some really amazing stuff with them. You'd search gardening and it would not just be articles from home and gardens, but it'd be like, here are the people you should
That are
check out.
most influential, and you even could you show tweets on
Yeah, we
like
could
the
show the right
Bing?
tweets, and then we built this thing
Wow.
where you could like
I didn't know
ask them a
this.
question and
Mhm.
like we'd integrate search results. We did like awesome stuff actually.
God,
Um,
and what we're gonna eventually get to is Klout gets sold, but now my mind is just racing as far as like just thinking about if you're able to do this with like all the other content sources out there with Reddit and YouTube
Yeah.
and like all these other things, like what you could do today to surface like, and also with AI, like this is just, this should be a layer of the internet.
yeah,
I
it should be.
really like, Evan, I asked him during the episode, I said, do you believe that Shyp could have gotten all the way and been like DoorDash or whatever it is I said? Here, Joe, you're painting a picture where actually this business could have gotten Klout, and you could have gotten all the way to unicorn status, maybe public company. Am I misrepresenting?
Yeah,
Is that what you feel today?
it's really funny. So I think about this a lot. um,
I bet.
uh, the
Yeah.
the company I did after Cloud literally failed. Like,
Right.
we
Right. Right.
sold it, but it was really just like they bought parts,
Yep.
and not a success in any way. And if I think about that company and I replay every decision we made and like what I would have done differently and what outcome would have came out of it, maybe we 2 times it, maybe we 4x it,
Right.
but it's still not a win on any meaningful scale.
Yep. I was
Sure.
the same
Okay.
way. Yeah.
And if I
Totally.
think about Clout and like how things could have played out, like if you could run the Clout, simulation 10 times,
Yeah.
I probably scored in like the lower third, and like for the moment we captured and the like timing of it and everything, could have done worse. But like there are a bunch of scenarios and like
Right.
little things that like it could be a layer of the internet and like
I believe you.
foundational, many, tens, hundreds of billions of dollar company
Yeah.
Yeah.
with a few things fall different ways.
So to continue the story. So what happened? So Microsoft obviously makes this investment, and you guys did this BD deal
Yeah.
on
So
Bing.
this is really like this is like the critical moment in the company
Yeah.
because there's like a bunch of forces at play. So there's uh, investors who's starting to get a little nervous, like they paid up at a high price and growth
Uh-huh.
is slowing. Team that's a little restless, and I see a life raft with Microsoft,
Right.
and I'm like, talk all the shit you want about Bing, like it's hundreds of millions of users. So I'm like, we could plug into that funnel, reignite growth, do some really strategic stuff. We start, we have reinforce this story that we are the page rank for people in this layer.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I have teams trying different ideas, but I'm like all in on Microsoft. I'm like, I'm going to make this work.
Right.
I'm up in Seattle 2 days a week,
Wow.
working in person with the team. Actually had an amazing experience working with them in a lot of ways. There's like a couple of the people there I'm very close to still. But it's like building the relationship. Like we are together and we're painting a picture of the future together. The guy who runs Bing, his name is Chi Lu. He's actually a pretty incredible guy. Like the highest capacity for work I've seen.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow.
Wow.
I spent 2 years in a row, December 26th, in the office all day with him. Like we were working that close together. And he's a guy, he would schedule meetings for like 2 a.m. And I'd be like, "Oh, are
Wow.
you in China?" Because they had the big R&D team over there. He's like, "No." I'm just like,
I just want
"What?"
to work.
Yeah,
Do
he's like, "Oh, can you come up on December 26th?"
this.
And it was part of a test to see how serious you were,
Yeah.
but he
Mhm.
also just worked that hard. So I'm like really close with these guys, like building cool stuff. And the hope is either we reignite growth or they're like, "Oh wow, this is critical. We can just buy this."
Right.
And then I return the fund and it's all
No
good. And
big
we're
deal.
like, yeah. So it we get into negotiations. We start talking about acquisition
Yep.
and get, really serious. Like we're talking about like what my role would be and how the team fits in and there's some Microsoft people in the Bay and which ones are in Seattle and how we do all these things. And we're like far into this. And Ballmer gets fired
Oh
and
Wow.
the deal
shit.
just like dies. So
That's
What?
yeah.
amazing.
So uh and
So
then
so walk back in the history of Microsoft. When did Ballmer get fired? What happened? Is this after he missed the mobile
he had
wave?
bought like Nokia and for
Okay.
like
Right.
12 billion, that, and he made a bunch of
Motorola.
big acquisitions. There
Yeah.
was an ad company they bought for a bunch. I remember I was on campus up there on the day their stock hit like the lowest price it had hit in like
Oh
many
wow.
years, and like the vibe on campus was terrible. Um, it was just, it didn't seem like they were heading in a great direction, and
Right. I
but like,
remember this now. Yeah. I remember. Yeah.
but we were like, we had spent time with him, we had spent time with Bill, like we were
Yeah.
like
Wow.
deep, um, and it just was like, this is on pause. This ain't happening right now. We'll see later. And
Mm.
now the core business is really, really hurting
Right.
because
Because
for
the
like,
core business comes into focus because the deal was in focus. And
Yeah.
they're like,
exactly.
whatever, we'll figure it out. The deal
Yeah.
is
The deal kept looking better and better. Like we were working on cooler and cooler stuff. Like we were really jamming. We had this big vision of what we could
Right.
do. And so I was like, well,
Did you guys
it,
talk like acquisition prices and like everything was it was going to be like a really big deal?
like a big
Okay.
deal. And like,
Wow.
Microsoft stock, even, it would have been really valuable because we were there talking about a deal when their stock was at a low
Oh
price
yeah.
for a high
God.
number. Like,
Yeah.
wow.
you know, uh, and it just falls apart. And, uh, and then, then the boards look at me like, whoa.
What the fuck?
What are you going to
And
do, Joe?
yeah, and the core business is like just drying on a vine. Like, it, got really neglected.
Yeah.
A lot of people on the team were like, everyone could see the momentum on the Microsoft thing. So everyone's like, oh, I'm going to ride this out
Right.
and we're going to get
Right.
acquired by Microsoft. It's
Right.
going to be awesome. And then it's like, hey guys, we're kind of pulling back from Microsoft.
Right.
And everyone then is just like, oh shit. And like team starts leaving, board starts like flailing. And then at the same time, Kleiner was going through, like there was a
Yeah. Big
lawsuit
change.
and there was a bunch of like,
Oh
and
right.
they
The
were
lawsuit. Yeah.
they were doing a new fund,
Yeah.
and both the partners who were on my board weren't in the new fund. So there was like
That
a
is that.
huge power vacuum on the board. So we went into this just like total, we're spinning.
This story is even crazier than I thought it would be.
I'm so glad we did the V2 of this.
Because it was,
I
and
ju-
it's so crazy in a startup because it was like a couple things break our way, and like
Yeah.
we have a life-changing, industry-changing deal with Microsoft. I think we would have been such a great fit with them. Like the way we were working together and the collaboration we had and the teams, and like we would have done amazing.
Mhm.
And it just died.
Joe, do you have
And then
Bill Gates' phone number on your phone?
no, I do not have his phone number, but I did get to spend time with him, which was amazing. Um, so board is freaking out. Board is a mess. I had, and they have like crazy board politics. Um, team is leaving. Emil
Right.
leaves. Like a lot,
Emil
everyone.
leaves.
Emil
Oh
goes to
shit.
Uber, which
Yeah.
I'm like,
Oh, okay. Got it.
hey, can you just take me with you on this one? And it's really, really painful, like all these things, because you know, I had a really hard time with people leaving because my identity is so tied into the
Yes.
company
Right.
that I feel like them leaving, they're not leaving the company, they're leaving me.
Right.
And so it's like really hard. And like I'm trying to like keep the ship from falling apart. It feels like the whole thing is falling apart.
Can we pause for a second, just like especially for like first time founders, like you going through that and then your now subsequent companies, like looking back on that moment of people leaving, do you think that it was as big of a deal as you gave it then, based on what you know now of building companies?
It's always hard. Like never, it was never drama in the sense like it was always, we lift people up and appreciate them. It was not
Yes,
like
yes.
interpersonal drama in any way, but like how hurt I would feel in the moment.
Right.
I have definitely gotten better at dealing with that. And like with everyone, it just takes a little time and then it's cool. Like
Yeah.
I think we have 13 companies spun out of Klout and I
That's
invested in like
amazing.
all of them. So like I
That's
love
great.
seeing, and it's been so amazing to see all the cool stuff people have gone on. I'm very close to like everyone.
Yeah.
But in the moment, yeah, it's like hard to not take it personally. And I have gotten better, but it's not, I don't know that it ever gets easy.
I just, and just a quick side note, and I want to get back to your story. I felt the same way with Shyp as well, and like I would do anything I possibly could do to like, if I heard this person wasn't like happier, so I'm like, do you want more money? Like
Yeah.
give you a more title and all that. And I've subsequently learned like
Can't save
that
people.
you can't save people, and also
Totally.
like any individual or even groups of individuals, like if they're not there, if they don't really want to be there, you don't really want them to be there anyways.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a new group of people or whoever else that can be excited by the company you're at, and that ultimately everybody is replaceable, including yourself as well. Like,
Totally.
and that's definitely, I think, a tough lesson for first time founders, because as you said, your identity's all tied up with it as well.
Yeah. And then like, definitely the idea of going to the board and being like, oh, this person left now and this person left.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to do that. And like, so went through all that, like trying to save people to
Right.
like,
Right.
realize you can buy a little bit of time sometimes, but it's like mostly not worth it and it's going to happen either way. So like, getting better at not taking it personal and getting better at like I would see somebody on a cell phone and be like, who are they talking to as a recruiter calling
shit.
them? Like you start getting like crazy,
Is
And
is Uber calling them?
and it turns into blood in the water where like one person leaves and then the recruiters start calling the rest of that team and like, well,
It is.
they must know
yeah.
something you don't,
Yeah.
and they get everyone kind of tripping out, and it's really bad. But it was like a really, really hard time in the company, and we're still trying to experiment out of it. I'm trying to like
Right.
trying to get plans, we're trying different things, but like we had lost our momentum in a massive way. Like we'd already kind of plateaued and then put all the attention on Microsoft, and then it just didn't happen.
But
So we were in trouble.
If you look objectively, those, right? Like you have tens of millions of dollars in revenue still, I'm assuming, unless that started to drop.
Still had
You
real
had
money.
tens of millions of registered, and I would consider them still active users, as they still have, and that's probably still growing as well. Like you still have a pretty good business
Still
here.
a good business. So there's conversations of like, should we cut way down and like, recalibrate around that business?
Right.
And I think, but that today, that's probably what you would do. Back then, the
Right.
idea of a
Right.
layoff was like, you might as well just close the company down. No
Yes,
one's going
I
to do it. You
remember
never will raise
that.
money.
Yeah.
No one will come work here if there's talk of a layoff, you're like done. So like it's a different era in that sense.
Yeah, you're totally
Um,
right.
and then, but we were at a high valuation. So like we got to be like, hey, we've taken revenue from 10 to 30 million,
Right. Right.
and now we're going to raise at, 400 million. And there just was like not a path to do that. So
Joe,
it's
you several times that you have said was one of my favorite quotes. There's so many good Joe Fernandez quotes, but one of them is, "I made many mistakes, and all of them were solvable, except for taking money at too high a valuation." Now, hear what you're describing, because I'm hearing, and it sounds like Kevin is also hearing, there's a business here,
Mm-hmm.
right.
and actually, I'm excited about that business, right? But your board partners don't exist anymore. Your last round was at, I don't know what it is, but like, I don't know, 300, something wild. And so, like, I get, like, I don't know, would a more serious operator have just continued to operate on the business and gotten at,
We would have,
that-
so people had paid up. We were at
Mm-hmm.
high valuation. Crazy thing was, I didn't even take the highest possible valuation in that round.
It's great.
So I thought I was being conservative,
Right.
but it was still high. And we now had a business that probably justified, half that valuation.
Right.
Have partners, and this is a learning lesson too. I always really liked young, kind of up and coming partners and VC
Mhm.
firms. Like I
Mhm.
felt like their energy matched mine, and it was this like, we're going to be doing deals together forever, like mentality. When things got hard, I didn't realize those people they're managing their own careers. And
they
like,
have no influence also at their fund.
yeah, and like they don't have the like uh the credibility, the clout to go to their fund and be like, these guys got it, back off, it's gonna be fine. Like they had told their fund this was gonna be awesome. They had
Right.
like, paid up to be in it. They had like bragged about it, and now it's treading water and going down. And like,
Yeah.
so their partners are like, well, what are you gonna do? This was supposed to save the fund. This is gonna be the fund returner. You gotta do something over there. So they start feeling a huge amount of pressure. And
Right.
none of them have like good relationships with everybody. But it was a tough time. Like everyone was
Yeah.
kind of figuring this out. And so then the conversation starts like, hey, maybe we need a new CEO to like
Right.
reignite this. And that's really the only path to like, you can get a new CEO, and that person can like say, hey, the only way I'll come on is if you guys put some more money in this company so that I have enough
Right.
time to execute my
Yeah.
plan. But no one's going to give me more money. I made this big bet on Microsoft. If
Right.
it worked, I'm a hero, but it
Right.
didn't
Right.
work.
Right.
So like, that's the conversation at the board is like, who should really be running this? Cause like we've lost confidence in you.
Right.
Uh,
That's tough.
yeah, it was tough for sure. Cause I'm also like, well, we don't have any product market, like we're losing product market fit. So like
Right.
they're bringing in people, I'm meeting people as potential CEOs, like
Yeah.
badass people. Like, but like, people who are like used to growing big businesses,
That
accelerating.
are already yet working. They found
Yeah.
product market fit. So you would say that you had not found product market fit.
Well, we had found product market fit that had to a point,
Right.
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 And
Because it
then,
changes. Yeah.
yeah, it changed. So we
yeah.
didn't find the next product market fit that takes it to the next level.
Wait,
Right.
hold on. I got to challenge this. Isn't product market fit at this point just deal velocity with brands in order to be able to say, we're going to get more influencers on the table so that you could sell more knickknacks or whatever? Isn't that product market fit at this stage? It's just about deal velocity?
It's still like, getting that business from $10 million to 20 to 50, like it wasn't clear that it was like as scalable. And you've not
Were
seen
you
it
just not, you had a sales team, obviously,
Yeah.
right? And you just weren't closing as many deals as you, to get
Well, so
from
that was
1 to 10 was a lot easier to go from 10 to 20.
right. And like, so that was like part of the discussion is like, could a more seasoned person build a like bigger,
Yeah.
build out, and like how will the product evolve more to a SaaS offering?
Huh.
And there's like a different revenue model around that that's more scalable. We were too campaign oriented, so it'd be really lumpy.
Right.
And we had some stuff that was like showing some promise around that. But like, basically they start a search for a CEO, and I'm involved, and like
Right.
we're, working well together, and,
Yeah.
thinking about it. And I get a call from another CEO
Yeah.
of, this company, the company that actually ended up buying us. He calls me, and they're interviewing somebody who worked for Klout.
Yeah.
And, so he calls me for a reference check on that person. And I ask him like, "Oh, what's the job for?" And he explains it to me. And I'm like, "Look, that person is amazing. I really love them. Like, we go out as couples, like they're really good, but I don't think that is a good role
Yeah.
for them."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Whoa, that's amazing. Like, no one ever tells the truth in these calls."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, no problem." And he's like, "Hey, by the way, we use your data and we're big fans." And I'm like, "Oh, we're probably going to have to shut you off because we're going to convert to the SaaS business, and
Right.
we're like, we're going to kill some of this data business so that we can
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
our own offering." And he's like, "Whoa, hold on. Can we get dinner? I want to talk to you about it."
Yeah.
Wow. What the fuck?
So
Startups are
random.
crazy.
Startups are
Startups-
crazy.
Yeah. So I get dinner. It takes like a month for us to like get dinner. We get dinner, and like he tells me the story of like, hey, they're at 100+ million revenue. They're on this path to go public. Clout's been on their board of, they've been talking about like how it would fit in,
Wow.
and we should combine forces, and they could go public faster. And basically everything my board's telling me is like, we have to build out this like SaaS machine and all these
Yeah.
salespeople, whatever, like they've already
They have
done.
that. Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And him and I get along well, and like the vision of the future is pretty like, aligned. So like he puts somebody on it, I put somebody on it. And I'm like, hey, I have a board meeting in like 3 weeks. Like we have to move fast. And if so, I could present something to the board.
Right.
And we actually, like that quickly get to like an outline of a deal.
Yeah.
That the board has now found somebody to replace me, and I'm coming to the board with a deal to sell the company.
Wow.
And
What?
like,
This
yeah.
story is amazing.
And that's like the meeting is like which of these paths.
direction are we going to go on? Wow.
And
How does the meeting go? Wait, hold on. Double click. What
super
happens
contentious
in the meeting? Yeah.
Yeah, like because it's totally everyone's playing a different game. We have investors who came in early,
Right. Right.
who this deal is like great.
And how many board seats you have now? It was like you and 2 Kleiners, 1 IVP.
Well, IVP, Venrock, those guys were just observers. They
Okay.
didn't actually have board seats.
Okay.
Graycroft had an observer. Kleiner had 2. We had one independent, and I had Emil sitting in the other common seat still, even though he left. Like,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
we were like,
Good for him. No.
yeah. Oh, and Emil was like a lifesaver. I wanted to keep Emil as close as possible.
Right.
So it's like it doesn't get to like board vote type thing because the board's weird, but like, there's a much bigger group of influencers around the board of,
Yeah.
and like Kleiner and IVP do deals with each other
Right. Right.
forever.
Absolutely.
And like, they're not going to piss each other off necessarily just for, like, it was like really, really interesting. Like one of the I'm like, side note, we're also starting to see in our relationships with Twitter and Facebook and all the social networks that the game is changing. Like,
Right.
this
Right.
is, we're now in 2014, and we are super dialed into these now. Like, we know all the people in the orgs. We're like constantly aware of like, the debates they are having internally. And I'm like, I don't know that we're going to keep this access to data.
Right.
So like data could disappear. Our business is slowing. You could throw a new person in here and who knows, or we have a deal on the table.
This is a no-brainer.
And I'm like, we should do this. And I have one of the investors who's came in late. He's like, look, I 100% disagree. Like, there's a chance it could still, this could still be a home run. I'm not going to go to my firm and tell them like I'm returning the money. Um, I'm against it. And it was just really interesting seeing like portfolio theory versus like this is our lives.
Yeah.
Like that was
That's right. You own 100. This is 100. This is your one shot.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is one of 30 or whatever shots of a farm.
Yeah. And he
And-
literally said like we would rather have this go to zero, but
Of
you
course.
try
Of course
to
they
hit
would.
a
Yeah.
grand slam
Yeah.
than you guys hit like a solid double or whatever.
So I'm
But,
curious.
like, and at least he's being honest.
No, it was
'Cause
great.
some people
It was
would-
actually no drama, and I like love that guy. Like he's actually an investor in my new company because
Yeah.
it was like there was no bullshit. It was just
Right.
like I understood, it made sense.
So now looking forward in the future, obviously the biggest risk was the platform risk. How much intel did you have to bring to the board?
We had a lot. So we had a giant. One of our biggest teams was business development,
Uh-huh.
and they were out doing deals, like getting Klout score placed everywhere, but like they were also working with all the platforms.
Right.
And we like mapped those orgs. So we knew, and we had like ownership. Like I would make sure to meet with the CEO of Twitter, at least like, a couple times a year. And
Yeah.
Emil would have a relationship with these people. And
Yeah.
like we had everyone mapped across these orgs. Like we did
Wow.
crazy stuff to like build those relationships so that like I just never wanted to like wake up and read TechCrunch and be like, oh shit, we got shut off.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I wanted to know if there was a problem. So if an ally got fired or quit or got
Right.
promoted or like somebody new came in, like we would know and we would figure out and like make friends with everyone we had to make friends with. It was like super, super strategic. It was interesting, but it was also really frustrating because we always like everything we built, we had to think about like, well, how will this person
Yeah.
think about it? And how do we
Right.
get them on board? And, how do we tell the story that it's benefiting them too? And it was a lot of work, but like, we could see the writing on the wall that like Facebook specifically and Twitter was leaning that way. And then you had new networks like Snap and Pinterest where they didn't even have APIs.
Right.
That the game was just going to change.
Mm.
So now go back to the boardroom. When obviously was there a decision that was made there? How did that negotiation go down?
I mean, it was really contentious. We had some people around the company who are like very strongly against the deal.
Yeah.
And in the end, I don't know if I've ever even told this in a broader way, like Kleiner came through. Like they
Awesome.
like my partner at Kleiner, I'll even say Chiwa Chen, like actually made it happen. Like we I told him like this has to happen, like, and explain why. I was like, and he challenged me really hard. And at the end, he was like, okay, I'm going to do everything I can to make it happen. And getting him on board broke the tie and
Right.
and like kind of,
you had Emil.
well, it wasn't even like from a voting tie, just from a like political machine.
Right.
It's so important to state that there are votes, yes.
Yeah, it's not a real
but
thing.
really, it's not how things are happening.
No, that's true.
Every
That's totally
side
true.
conversation has occurred prior.
Yep.
The decision is made beforehand. And that's what Joe is, I think, really clarifying is Chihuahua came around not just on from a vote standpoint, but he came through ahead of time, giving Joe the commitment to go through with this thing.
And they were he was so respected across the board, and and these people want to keep doing deals with him, and that him saying like this is the right thing to do just got everyone else to kind of fall in line.
Right.
Oh
My God, it's like I've been holding my breath the whole time.
Yeah, it was insane. So it was like it was crazy because it was like we had this thing with Microsoft that would have been a huge win, and got blindsided and kind of it fell apart. And then out of nowhere, I get this reference call that turns into like a pretty good win. So it's like, I don't know, there's so much of the startup life in there to me that like,
Yeah.
you work so hard, and we did so many like dumb things and so many smart things, and like it all comes down to these like little lucky breaks at the
Luck.
edges.
Yeah. Right. Well, and
And the
also,
need to continue on getting those lucky breaks. Because
Yeah.
at any point, you got to be like, I'm not saying that people should, but at any point, someone exhausted could be like, fuck it. Sure,
Yeah.
let CEO take it. Fucking go.
Our
Right.
team was tired, and like, I mentioned we had people leaving, but I had this crew that really stuck through, and we had kind of different teams over the years, kind of generations of teams, but like by the end, there was a really tight group that had been
Yeah.
there like 3+ years, all of them, and
Yep.
everyone was just so tired and so
Right.
beat down. And so I also was like, well, if we don't do this deal, I have to like rebuild the whole team effectively.
Right.
Julian, I think you've said this a few times. I always loved it. Like, when you're building a startup, you're basically playing a game without a save. There's no save.
Yeah, there's no save button. You can't restore.
Yeah. So it's like
I know.
you're just going and
never heard
hoping to
that.
get more lucky breaks and hoping, whatever. With all the conversations I get hit up every day of like, man, if Klout was around today, it'd be so huge. Like I would, in the same scenario I was in, would take the deal 100 times out of 100 because
It was the
Yeah.
right decision, clearly,
Mhm.
because ultimately the platform risk was
so huge.
like, it
And
was
it
so
played out.
huge.
It's like you can't. There's a reason there's not a new Klout.
Yeah,
You can't get the data.
exactly. Unless you tried to scrape it, and especially now with like now there's so many interesting players. Now I didn't realize Microsoft was involved, which now is OpenAI, and now you see in the news today, like Reddit is now charging for access to their data,
Yeah.
and like all these things. Like it's definitely clear that Clout definitely in these times would not have existed unless you somehow could have like made yourself a part of the internet, which I don't understand. I don't know
Develop
how
your own page rank in a way that did not depend on others. Really.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
how
first-
Google did, obviously. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So like, but where we were in that moment,
Right.
like it was the right deal to take. But it was like we got super lucky to sell the company when we did, and
Wow.
and then that was a whole another interesting story of like being a part of a bigger company.
Yeah.
I joined the board of that company. They then got acquired by Vista Private Equity, and
Yep.
there was like lots of stuff there that were cool.
So then
I
what?
love this idea of joining boards. You and I have in the past talked about this. I was on the board after being CEO for many years at Breather and watched another set of operators operate my company,
Yeah.
which was crazy.
Wild.
And so, Joe, I know being on this bigger board, you learned a lot watching and being one of these people. Is that one of sort of the side blessings that came as a result of this deal happening?
It was really cool because I somewhere earlier in the story I said like my first board meeting at Klout was the first time I was ever in a boardroom. So I had never seen how a board meeting should run or how a CEO did it. And I really, really struggled in our board meetings. We had a tough board, and then like they were like brutal, and I still have kind of PTSD from it. So seeing another CEO, and I was on that board for like 3 years. I think I
Wow.
said like 2 words in the board. I was added no value, but I
You
selfishly
extracted some.
but I like learned a lot. And that CEO, he was great. I learned a lot from him. And even just, there were times he struggled, and seeing somebody who I like saw as a very professional CEO struggle, felt good selfishly because it's just like, oh, this is hard for everybody.
Right. Right.
And,
It is. Yeah.
it was cool. I definitely benefited seeing that board, and I think it has helped me a lot since then.
That's great. Well, this story, it took way more twists and turns than I even.
Still the abridged version. There's a lot more craziness
Oh,
in there,
man.
but that's the kind of like rise and fall of Klout, and it's been.
Thank you for telling it.
It's an incredible story.
Yeah.
And Joe, I don't know. There's, what really gets me about these is the same thing with yours, Kevin, is there are a lot of these almost stories out there in Silicon Valley.
Yes.
An example of one that I know a little bit more closely is the rise and fall of Clubhouse, right?
Yes.
That's a crazy story. That's super fast and super crazy. But like everyone hears the outside version.
Yeah.
Lots of people hear portions of it. And here we just happen to have a friendly set of people that are not going to go to Joe, for example, and someone hostile would be like, what the fuck? You stole all the data, or some version. But in fact, like we have a certain empathy for all the stuff that he has done. And so I think he's able to tell the story in a uniquely friendly way that I love. And it is super compelling, Joe, to hear it. And I'm super appreciative of your openness.
Yeah, it's fun. It's more, I get asked the story a lot, and don't talk about it that much, but it's like, it's more the version of like, oh, we have to have a beer to like, to tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's great. I think, do you want to wrap up here on that note?
Yeah. People, let us know what companies you want us to go do this with next.
Yeah. And anybody else wants to come on and go in depth analysis of a success or failure of a notable startup. Yeah. I think this is a really cool kind of series that we're creating. So
it's very compelling first of all, it's compelling to be a part of. It's compelling to listen to.
Listen to it. Yeah. For me, it's been great. And so startups are fucking hard.
Yeah. This is, you don't want to feel bad for CEOs, right? Like CEOs.
No.
But what you do, lots of people's jobs are hard. Lots of people's jobs are hard and not well rewarded. A teacher's job is hard and not well rewarded in many senses. CEOs' jobs are hard and they are well rewarded, but they are hard.
Yeah.
And here, what is so difficult is that lack of safe point, is the great unknown. Joe had no fucking idea what he was doing, and none of us
still
along the way.
Still true.
No, you know way more now. You actually played the game a couple times.
Yes, we go to you for so many things.
Like, Joe, what should we do? That's what we do when we're wondering,
All right,
cool.
Well, let's wrap this episode. Joe, thanks so much for telling the story.
Thanks,
guys. And thanks for listening, everybody.
Cool.
Bye. We'll see you later. Bye.